So here we are in Revit, and I'm going to take the part of an architectural designer, and I'd like to place a component that's been shared with me by my manufacturing partner via Informe Design. So I'll come up here to the Informe Design plugin, and I'll choose Product, and I'll browse to the location of the product that's been shared with me. So here's the product I want to insert. I'll select the product, and I'll choose Open. Now I've seen that my manufacturing partner has given me a number of options that I can configure and choose the version of this design that suits my project the best. So I can change the run height, I can change the run length, and I've got this option here to add a return, so I can add a return onto the front or the back. And when I add a return, I can also change the length of that return. Now I can also choose to change the type of fixing option. And finally, if I come down here, I can see my manufacturing partner has given me the option to change from a primary representation. And that just means it's the full manufacturing level of detail. All the nuts and bolts are included. So I'm going to change here to the simplified version. So the simplified version has been created by the manufacturer. And the simplified version has reduced the part count, has reduced some of those small features, those tiny engineering fillets that we don't need, just to keep the Revit model performant. So once I've selected my options, I then come over here and I would click Generate. And what's happening in the background is the information that I've put in is now being sent to the Informe Design service. And the Informe Design service is going to take the inventor model that's been created by the manufacturer, it's going to make the changes to those parameters, and then it's going to deliver an RFA file to me that I can use inside Revit. Now, while I'm waiting, I can come up here to the Select tab, and I can see that there are a number of variants that have already been generated for this product. So whenever anybody anywhere in the world that has permission to access this product creates a variant, the variant they've created would appear in this list. And in fact, I can see that there's a variant down here that would do me. So I can actually just select this pre-configured variant, and I'm going to take this variant, I'm going to choose Insert, and this will be inserted for me just like any standard Revit family. So I can place this in here, and I can see my components being added in here in 2D and 3D, and it's also been added to the schedule below. And if I look at the type, some of the information that the manufacturer has shared with me has been baked into this model. So not only can we see standard things like the model number and manufacturer, but we can also see some of the information that's been shared, like that simplified model state, the return type, and the overall dimensions. So let's imagine now that we're a manufacturer, and as a manufacturer, we would like to know which variants have been chosen on this project. As an architectural designer, I'd like to make sure my manufacturer has access to my Revit project. So I'll save this project, I'll publish latest to Autodesk Docs, and then I'll make sure my manufacturer has permissions to access this Revit project in the cloud. So as a building component manufacturer, I'd like to know which of my products or which of my components were used in this architectural project. And so I have permission to access the cloud shared Revit project. So I will select it in Informe Design, and I will click Open Model. And here inside the model, I can see the various different versions of the balustrade that's been selected by the architectural designer. And I can go through the information that's available for each one, or I can just select them all, and I'm ready to generate outputs. Generate outputs is going to allow me to generate the outputs that were defined by the product manufacturer when they designed the model inside Autodesk Inventor. So I can see that I can pick the 2D drawing, I can pick the instance level bill of materials, and I can also pick an aggregated bill of materials. And then if I wish, I can also have some neutral file formats. I need to pick an upload location, and the upload location can be BIM 360, it can be Autodesk Docs, and it can be Fusion Team. I'm just going to stick with Autodesk Docs for the time being. I'm going to select my folder and pick Checkout. At some point in the future, there may be a token charge for Informe Design generating outputs, but currently there's no token cost, so we can just hit Submit Request. And we can see that from each of those variants, the Informe Design service is now generating the required outputs the PDF, the CSV of the bill of materials, and any neutral file formats we requested. So in the past, as a product manufacturer, I may have had to manually select each variant that the architectural designer had specified. I would need to check that its configuration is something we can actually achieve in terms of manufacturability. I would then need to produce the drawing of each variant so I could produce a bill of materials, so I could then order the materials and then pass on that selection down into the manufacturing workshop where they could begin to cut and weld and build all these components. With Informe Design, generating outputs is an automated process, which means that I can simply hit run and then go away and do something else more useful. Now our outputs are generated, we can go to the upload location. I have that open for you here. And we can see that we have the outputs generated for each of our components. So we have the bill of materials for each component, and we also have the PDF drawing of each component. So as a product manufacturer, by providing an architectural designer with a much richer configurable asset, I also get the benefit that I can automate my process and generate the documentation I need for manufacturing based on the choices that have been made by the architectural designer. So as a building component manufacturer, how do I build these information-rich, configurable inventor models that I can then pass on to my architectural design partners? Well, it starts here in Inventor. Inventor is a mechanical design package. It's meant for designing things for fabrication. And it also has a great configuration engine. It's called iLogic. And in this case, I've built my configurable assembly, and I've also built a little iLogic form that I can use just to demonstrate to you today the configurations available. So you can see that we have the option to change the length, we have the options to change the height, and we can also add that return on there that we saw inside our Revit model, and we can change the fixing type. So if I apply these changes, we'll see the inventor model reconfigure itself and build itself again using the rules that we've applied. So I also wanted to show you the concept of model states. So we have a full manufacturing level of detail here. We have all the information built into the model we need for manufacture. Our architectural design partners may not want all that information inside Revit. Well, we can use something called model states inside Inventor to switch between a highly detailed model and a more simplified model. And these model states are built in by the manufacturer as they model each component. So in this case, we've reduced the number of components. We've maybe got rid of some holes that you don't need to see in the Revit model. We've got rid of things like small fillets and chamfers, which really don't add anything for an architectural plan set. Now let me reset this model. I'll close the iLogic form. We're done with that now. And let me just show you this model contains the bill of materials, which is the list of components which we're either going to have to purchase or fabricate. And then we also have the manufacturing drawings that are required downstream. And so now we have our configurator built. How do we get this into Informe Design? Well, the first step is actually to go to the BIM definition tab. In the BIM definition tab, I'm going to choose BIM properties. So the BIM definition allows us to add information to our model which is required by Revit and the Revit user. So you can see here we can add some connectors in there if we had MEP systems perhaps. We can also add things like behavior types. So I've set this model to be face-based, and that just means that rather than placing it only on a floor, we can also place it on a stub wall, or in the case of the demonstration we just saw, we actually placed it on a roof. So apart from the behavior type, we can set the Revit family category to make sure it's going to be categorized correctly inside Revit. That means it's going to appear correctly inside any schedules. We can set the family name and we can set the family type name. And this family type name is actually being generated by an iLogic rule, which concatenates various different parameters so that the family type name is always going to be unique. And then you can see in here, we can map across between some standard Inventor data and some standard Revit data. And then down here at the bottom, we've also added in some of our Inventor parameters that we would like to show to the Revit user. So we've included them in there as well, so they can appear inside the Revit model. So once we've prepared our Inventor model with some of that information that might be needed by Revit or might be needed by a Revit user, we're now ready to publish to Informe Design. So I'll come up here to the Informe Design tab, come to the product definition. I'm going to edit the product definition that I created earlier. And in our product definition, the first thing we'll find is we're telling Informe Design where to find all the components that go with this configurable model. So all of our components are inside the root folder. That root folder will be zipped and it will be uploaded to Informe Design so that we can use your configurator as part of the Informe Design service. So everything that's required by this configurator must be in that root folder. Next, we can adopt parameters. So any of the parameters we have in the inventor model, we can expose them to the Revit user. Not all of our parameters need to be configurable by the Revit user. Some might be calculated, some just might not be applicable. So once we've decided which parameters we want to show to the Revit user, we can then build a form. Now we had an iLogic form here, but we don't have iLogic in Revit. So we need a way of providing a form that we can put in front of the Revit user. And so each parameter that we adopt will appear here in the form designer. This is using code blocks. So this code block here represents the form, and then each of these code blocks here represents an input. So the input allows us to put in a value that we can then use to change the parameter in the inventor model. Next comes our input logic. So our input logic allows us to control what's admissible in each of these inputs. We don't want to have our architectural design partners accidentally put an input value in which is not manufacturable. Perhaps it's not supported by the material size, perhaps it's not supported by a manufacturing technique. So we want to have a method of controlling the allowable inputs. So in this case, for example, we have the run height, and the run height has a minimum of 400, maximum of 1500, and we've set an increment value here of 50, again using our code blocks inside Informe Design. And we can see that in our form preview here, we have a run height, 400 is a minimum, 1500 is maximum, increments of 50. If we use the controls here, we can see that we can only bring it up or down by 50. And if we were to put in a value which falls outside that, we can see that it's automatically corrected, and we have a little warning here that pops up just to tell us why that value is not what you inputted. So it's up to us as the manufacturer, as the component manufacturer, as the building product manufacturer, to make sure we put the logic in here to make sure that we can offer the configurations to our architectural design partner, but to make sure that they can't accidentally pick something which we can't fabricate. So let me reset that. The last tab for us to look at is the Outputs tab. And here we can make some choices about which outputs we'd like to have available to us when our design has been configured and placed into the Revit model. So for example, we can choose which model states we actually want to offer to the architectural designer. We can choose whether we want to have access to the actual inventor model. And then we can also choose, for example, whether we want to include the drawing in its native DWG format or as a PDF. We can choose whether we want to allow the bill of materials to be exported as a CSV file. And we can also choose various neutral file formats that we'd like to be generated from that version of the inventor model. So once we've been through this process, we've identified the source content, we've identified the parameters that we would like to make available to our architectural design partners to change. We've added some logic to make sure they can't add any variants which are not manufacturable. And then we've decided which outputs we'd like to make available. The last step is to publish to Informe Design. So I'll click Publish, and I can browse to the project file where I'd like to share this component. So I have a couple of options here. If I have permission to publish to my architectural partner's Autodesk Docs project, I can publish my components directly to their project. The alternative is I can have my own Autodesk Docs project, and I can publish my entire catalog to my own project, and then I can use Bridge to bridge between my Autodesk Docs project and my architectural design partner's Autodesk Docs project. So the last thing to show you is just revision control. So I'm going to jump back to the Informe Design web app, and I'm going to come up here to Releases. I'll choose my balustrade assembly. And here's where I can see each release of my product. Now currently I only have one default release, so my architectural design partners are only going to see release number 4. If I create a new release, they'll be able to see release number 4 and release number 5. Now if I don't want them to see the old release anymore, let me demonstrate on this previous release. I can choose Update Status. An update status just allows me to obsolete the old release, means nobody else can see it. It's still recorded in the system for posterity, but it can't be seen by my Revit partner. So in this way, I get to push updates whenever I have a new release of my product. My architectural design partners will always receive the latest version of my design, and I can obsolete old versions to make sure that they don't choose something which is no longer viable. So thank you very much for joining me for this demonstration. I hope you have a go with this dataset yourself, and I look forward to getting your feedback.